do have are a very particular set of skills.
Hey guys, CJ here. If you can notice, I'm solo. Josh couldn't be with us this evening, unfortunately. However, I'm going to do my best to give you the best show we can. Now, a couple notes before we dive right in here. This covers the broad spectrum of everything comics, just like this channel. We run from video games to television to movies to the comics themselves. So these awards will cover that whole broad spectrum. And as for the award categories, if you didn't vote or if you weren't following this process before, the categories, we don't divide into, like for actor and actresses, for example, we don't divide into supporting versus main. So for example, Tom Cavanaugh could win the best comic book television actor just as easily as Grant Gustin. And as some of you may have seen, he was among those nominated. So yeah, before we just dive right in, I want to say thanks for bearing with us through the technical difficulties that we had yesterday. Thank Fox, actually, wonderful folks over there that decided to hit us with a copyright strike for using a leaked image of Doctor Doom. So airing that dirty laundry, just so you know where we're at, because we always want to live stream this thing. It actually just happened at a bad time. It was about 3 months ago, so we're about 3 months into the strike. We should get it over with in March, and we'll try to keep our noses clean so we can go back to being live next year. So, without further ado, so let's jump back into what some might consider a puff category this year, and that is the best comic book video game of 2014. Now, in a normal year, we might actually see more additions to this category. We might see better additions, so to speak. That's not to knock any of the nominees for this year, just that there weren't many. And the nominees for the best comic book video game of 2014 are Lego Batman 3, Disney Infinity 2.0, The Walking Dead Season 2, and Infamous Second Son. So all of these are great games. Lego Batman 3, much hyped. Beyond Gotham, tons of characters, tons of playable characters. The biggest Lego game yet, Disney Infinity 2.0, kind of an innovative, really kind of fun way. It's clearly, I mean, it's a game aimed at, kind of the way children play with action figures and stuff like that, but it knows no bounds. I've seen people that are adults having more fun with it than children are. The Walking Dead Season 2, critically acclaimed game, critically acclaimed series from Telltale. They always do good work. Infamous Second Son, sort of in the area because they're superheroes. There were some Infamous comics there, so it was a little bit of a dubious distinction, a little bit of a gray area. We decided to just throw in. And the award goes to Lego Batman 3. Honestly, not much of a surprise here if you were following the comic book video game world. Lego Batman 3, by far and away, in my opinion, the best game in that category. Once again, not a knock on any of it. I voted for it, but not a knock on any of the other games. Pretty dry year for that, though. So, now that we're done with the video games, let's just jump right into comic books, the actual comic books themselves. And we want to end off with the television, the movies, the really kind of exciting, much anticipated stuff. So, comic books are second. And 4 categories here. If you voted, you know that's best comic book artist, best comic book writer, best comic book publisher, and best comic book of 2014. And I've got to tell you just a little personal story. When we were putting this together, the nomination process was really interesting because this year we wanted to do something different on both fronts. Last year it was, if you didn't know this, it was just me and Josh, and we picked the nominees, we picked the winners, and it kind of felt a little dry just because we didn't feel like we were really gauging what the public was feeling on all of these categories. And so we really wanted to branch out, not only in nominations, because just us nominating people would limit public choice even more, but we wanted to get the public a vote. And that, behind that we were designing a website. We hit some bumps in the road with that. Luckily, Will, our technical producer, came through this year. Last year he was the source of our technical problems. This year he actually solved all of them. Now I'm afraid he's going to wreck the broadcast because he's standing right behind the camera. He's probably going to throw things at me. But I was very scared that you actually were throwing something there. But so yes, opened it up to the public vote. Had some more technical issues there, but I gotta tell you, in the nominations for this, we actually received the widest variety of nominations for this, the comic books category in itself. The driving factor behind every, comic book medium is the comics themselves, the pages. But yeah, so we ended up with a ton of variety here, and it was so hard to narrow down that essentially, what we kind of had to do was take the things that were nominated just more than once in this category. And so for that reason, it was really kind of hard to choose, and luckily the public helped us out. So let's begin with the best comic book artist of 2014. Now, this is really tough because art, beauty in the eye of the beholder. Someone's art, might be considered better than someone else, and, that person's opinions could be completely thrown out by another person. Art is entirely subjective, so this is one of the reasons why this category was so tough, especially for nominations. So, Best Comic Book Artist, the nominations are Jim Lee with Superman Unchained, Fiona Staples for Saga, David Aja for Hawkeye, Mikael Yanin for Grayson, Nick Dragotta for East of West, Tony Salvador Daniel, Batman Detective Comics and Superman/Wonder Woman, and Paulo Rivera from The Valiant. All of them fantastic artists. I would give the award to them all if I could, but the Best Comic Book Artist of 2014 award goes to Jim Lee for his work in Superman Unchained. And if you haven't been reading Superman Unchained, go check it out and you'll see why. He's certainly fantastic, certainly a very, very talented artist, and very deserving of the award. Congratulations, Jim. Now, on to Best Comic Book Writer, another one that was completely subjective, because writing is a form of art. Writing, it may not look like conventional art, but writing is once again so subjective, it's really hard not to call it art. So, the categories for Best Comic Book Writer are Scott Snyder for Batman, Superman Unchained, and Witches, Jonathan Hickman for East of West, New Avengers, and Avengers, Grant Morrison for Multiversity, Dan Slott for Spider-Verse, Superior Spider-Man, and The Amazing Spider-Man, Tim Seeley and Tom King for Grayson, Brian K. Vaughan for Saga, and Matt Fraction for Hawkeye and Sex Criminals, and just the title alone piques my interest. The award for Best Comic Book Writer goes to Scott Snyder for Batman, Superman Unchained, and Witches. Now, Scott is clearly, one of the hardest working guys in the industry. He's really taken Batman to new heights, I think, with his run. So very, very well deserving. Congratulations to you, Scott. And now we move on to some even more divisive fare, the Best Comic Book Publisher. And this is a hard one to gauge, really. Who is the best comic book publisher? And so much of it is, once again, subjective. Everybody's got an opinion. And so without further ado, let's just dive right in. The Best Comic Book Publisher Award. So we've got Marvel, DC, Valiant, and Image. Now, all of them are great, great, great comic book companies. All of them have produced some great stuff. I think, recently, it used to just be Marvel and DC, where the two juggernauts, the two giants fighting. But now we see it's becoming more and more broken up by not really independent, not just, smaller companies, but a lot by independent publishers. And people like Top Cow, although they're a subsidiary of Image, I guess they did have some works in like the 90s and the 2000s, but it's really kind of this new wave, Valiant. All these, publishers are sort of coming up and producing not only, increasingly critically acclaimed books, but increasingly popular books as well. And the Best Comic Book Publisher of 2014 award goes to Marvel. And, a lot of people would call us Marvel fanboys, but this was actually one of the most voted on categories, so we're hiding behind public vote to kind of skew the bias a little bit. So now, onto the Best Comic Book of 2014. And this is, the heavy-hitting one. This is the one that everybody, kind of will debate on and on, just like Best Comic Book Movie and Best Comic Book Television Show. And the Best Comic Book of 2014 nominees are New Avengers, Hawkeye, Grayson, Batman, Multiversity, Saga, East of West, and X-O Manowar. I'm not gonna say outright that Josh made me put X-O Manowar in there. I'm just saying I might have feared for my life. So, yes, of course, tons of great nominees here. New Avengers, a personal favorite of mine. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Hawkeye, coming to an end here, but it's been critically lauded. Absolutely amazing. Matt Fraction does such a good job on that. Grayson, one of my new favorites. If we were doing the best new series of 2014, I would probably give it to Grayson. Although, popular vote, public vote, you guys choose. Batman from Scott Snyder, who just won, best writing. Multiversity from Grant Morrison, another really interesting, big kind of comic event, big comic book series. Grant Morrison, great guy, kind of looks like Lex Luthor. Have you ever seen? Go Google a picture of Grant Morrison right now. I didn't even know what he looked like. I was kind of expecting someone like Alan Moore, a dude that looked like he kind of walks around in a t-shirt and sweatpants, who hasn't shaved since 1983. But no, he's actually, very fit, very bold. And so, the Best Comic Book of 2014 award goes to New Avengers. So, give yourself a hand, Jonathan Hickman. Although I really expected Hickman to win for writer. I think we saw the New Avengers was winning pretty handily, and it did win pretty handily. And we all expected Hickman would really win the writer category, but no, that went to Snyder. Snyder, a very popular choice, it would appear. And now, we move on to television, and this is an area that has seen such an unprecedented, absolutely incredible boom over the last couple of years, starting with, Arrow, and then Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and now The Flash, and Gotham, and Constantine, and just this Tuesday is going to be Agent Carter's premiere, with essentially what is a small TV movie. 2 hours can hardly be considered small. It might actually be considered a part of the MCU after it airs. Well, not just a part of the MCU, but a part of Phase 2 after it airs. And so really, tons coming, tons more coming, and we'll talk about that more in the most anticipated category. So we're going to start with the worsts, and this is kind of something fun that we wanted to do. We imagine this is kind of a cross between the Oscars and the Razzies. The Oscars, the Golden Globes, the Emmys, the Razzies, all of that stuff kind of rolled into one, where we, and now you, assign you who exactly was the worst of the worst in all things comic book. And so we're going to begin with Worst Comic Book TV Actress. And I will say, this is not a personal indictment against any of these nominees and these actors and actresses. The people have spoken. So yes, let's just dive right in here. The Worst Comic Book TV Actress. And the nominees are Cameron Bicondova from Gotham. I really have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right. Erin Richards from Gotham. Willa Holland from Arrow, Katie Cassidy from Arrow, and Candice Patton from The Flash. Now, a couple of notes here. All DC, not us. We had a nominating committee this year. Really interesting because Cameron Bicondova and Erin Richards, I will say, are probably the victims of interesting tonal writing. I really have no idea where they're going with the writing in that show. I mean, it's an interesting ride for sure. But sort of that might skew that a little bit, so take it with a grain of salt. Willa Holland and Katie Cassidy both were on this list last year, I believe. Willa Holland actually won this category last year, so she faces sort of a double whammy in repeating years. And Candice Patton, I just want to say, is pretty much by far and away the most controversial pick. We actually had some people on Twitter, shout out to Comic Book Bros, tweeting at us asking why she was on our worst list. And believe me, I know I didn't nominate her. I did not, I can tell you that much, but it was not entirely up to me. The people have spoken. So, without further ado, the winner of the dubious honor of Worst Comic Book TV Actress of 2014 is Erin Richards from Gotham. Now, she plays Barbara on the TV show Gotham, and like I said, she kind of suffers a little bit from writing, I think. They play up the melodrama, certainly some operatic aspects of that show, interesting tonal choices. I think it just doesn't sit well with a lot of people. So now, on to the Worst Comic Book TV Actor. And not all of these are from the DC Universe, so put away your pitchforks, please. Worst Comic Book TV Actor. The nominees are David Mazouz from Gotham, Colton Haynes from Arrow, and Reed Diamond from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And what's interesting here is, David Mazouz, of course, plays the young Bruce Wayne. Colton Haynes plays Speedy, Arsenal, Red Arrow, whatever you want to call him. Reed Diamond plays Whitehall. If you're not familiar with him, he actually has been in the show Franklin and Bash as well. Pretty criticized performance, I feel, from all three of these. I will tell you now, it's not Mazouz, just because I didn't nominate Mazouz personally. I think, you can't really fault a child actor. It's 9 times out of 10 you're going to get what you would expect from a child actor. And he hasn't been all bad. So, without further, ado, the winner of the dubious honor of Worst Comic Book Television Actor is Reed Diamond for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Just a weird pick. I feel like they might have gotten someone German to play a Nazi, although that's a pretty touchy subject over there, so I'm not sure how they would feel about that. Reed served his purpose. He just didn't quite stick in the hearts and the minds of the fans as well as he probably could have, and the people have spoken. So, now that we're off that gloomy subject, let's actually move into something a little more fun, a little more lighthearted. Let's do the bests. So the best comic book TV actress. Tons of nominees here. We have 5. Can't count. We have 5 nominees here, kind of opening it up a little bit. And the nominees for best comic book television actress are Emily Bett Rickards from Arrow. She plays Felicity. Katie Lotz plays Sarah on Arrow. Chloe Bennett, who plays Skye, aka now, spoilers, Daisy Quake Johnson. Ming-Na Wen, who plays Agent Melinda May, the Cavalry on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Danielle Pennebaker, who plays Caitlin Snow, I believe her last name is. Don't quote me on that, and please put away the pitchforks. On The Flash, Danielle Pennebaker, of course, has been around for a while. She was on a lot of Disney Channel shows. Ming-Na Wen and Chloe Bennett kind of suffered a little bit last year from the rocky start that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. went through. Luckily, it's hit its stride this season, and tons of intrigue, and I think Skye's character is going to get a lot more interesting to fans now that she's been revealed as an Inhuman and has gotten really cool earthquake powers. And then Katie Lotz and Emily Bett Rickards, both shining talents on Arrow, just both of them fantastic. Emily Bett Rickards, Felicity, really one of the standout characters. She's been out of the comic book now. And Katie Lotz's Sarah kind of won the hearts and the minds of the fans. She was really what we were expecting in Black Canary, if it wasn't entirely, too close to the comic book, and she is hella fine, if I do say so myself. Without further ado, the winner of the Best Comic Book TV Actress is Chloe Bennett for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And like I said before, I think, her campaign, if you could call it that, was really boosted by a heavy dose of intrigue and a really interesting plot that came with this season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., excuse me. So yes, congratulations to you, Chloe. Congratulations to all of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Now we move on to another Best Comic Book TV Actor. And this one was a hot race, I tell you. It was close, although the winner won by quite a margin. Let's go to the nominees. Grant Gustin, who plays Barry Allen on The Flash. Tom Cavanaugh, who plays Dr. Wells on The Flash. Matt Ryan, who plays the titular character in Constantine. Robin Lord Taylor, who plays the young Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin, on Gotham. Clark Gregg, who plays, of course, Agent Coulson on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He's been around for a while. John Barrowman plays Merlin in Arrow. So, yes, tons of great actors here. Really, a lot of great ones. This was not exactly like a 2-horse race. It was more like a 4-horse race. I kind of saw this coming down to Grant Gustin, Matt Ryan, Robin Lord Taylor, and Clark Gregg. And I think, sometimes, there's a reason why there's a supporting actor category, although I think for our purposes it's not entirely, necessary. The fact that Robin Lord Taylor could be involved in that race over Ben McKenzie, certainly noteworthy. The fact that John Barrowman could be involved in the horse race over Stephen Amell, certainly noteworthy. So really interesting here. And the winner of Best Comic Book Television Actor is Grant Gustin, who plays Barry Allen on The Flash. He has been such a standout, such a treat. He brings the character to life. I feel like he really, and the writers do a great job of capturing the essence of the character and really bringing him to the screen. Really great job, and honestly, I think I speak for us all when I say we're really excited to see what the second half of the first season of Flash has in store. Of course, off that mid-season finale, we are all really hotly anticipating it. The Best Comic Book TV Show. Now, this is a whammy, and I expect this to be pretty hotly debated. It was pretty hotly debated, and this was actually a very close race. And the Best Comic Book Television Show nominees are The Flash, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Constantine, Star Wars Rebels, and The Walking Dead. Now let's run through this list real quick. The Flash, standout first season show. Like I said, won the hearts and minds of a lot of fans by capturing the essence of the character. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. receiving a bump and intrigue, certainly hitting its stride as a television program. Definitely really interesting stuff going on there. And of course, we all can't wait after that mid-season finale. Constantine, another standout first season show behind Matt Ryan, who unfortunately did not win Best Actor, but is really driving that, and it kind of is surviving a rocky start. Another one that has sort of burrowed itself into the hearts and minds of fans. Not unlike, a demon. It might require an exorcism. Of course, we're going to require an exorcism if it gets canceled. So yes, hashtag Save Constantine, Armin, of course, spearheading those efforts. And Star Wars Rebels, really interesting one, another standout first season show. So this list is heavily populated with standout shows in their first seasons. Star Wars Rebels, a great animated show, the only animated show nominated for this category. And The Walking Dead, really, of course, a heavily critically favored show. Tons of people love it. It's been around on AMC. I think it's in its 4th season now. I need to catch up on it. And the winner of Best Comic Book TV Show of 2014 is The Flash. Yes, The Flash, standout first season show. Of course, you kind of look at the Best Comic Book TV Actor going to Grant Gustin, and that's a big part of why The Flash won the Best Comic Book TV Show. So, yes, congratulations to the Flash team, congratulations to Grant Gustin, all of you guys there. And now, let's move into the movies, the big stuff, the big guns. Really, we live in an exciting time. To recap some of the events of this year, and especially a particularly hectic month where it seems like I was waking up and making a news video, or editing and rendering a news video that someone else had made for pretty much about a solid, like almost every day or every other day for, like I said, a solid month. It's going to be an interesting couple of years, folks, for us comic book fans, and of course us comic book fans that go to the movies and enjoy Marvel's movies and are looking forward to what DC has done. DC announcing their film slate and then Marvel announcing their film slate. Really, the back and forth kind of, it's not exactly, I wouldn't call it a Cold War, because that would mean nothing's happening. This is going to become a hot war at the box office, and this is going to become hotly contested. We're going to see movies pretty much. I think there's something like 9 comic book movies coming out in 2017 or 2018, and just a slew, pardon my French, just a shit ton of comic book movies. Taking a hit to my credibility there to get my point across. We are going to be comic book movied out. I think next year, of course, very interesting, because it's the last year of what you might call Marvel dominance, or sole Marvel control, just because we've got Age of Ultron, and then we've got Ant-Man, we've also got the Fantastic Four reboot, but in the year directly following that, we've got a lot of interesting stuff coming up from DC. We've got Batman vs. Superman and later the Suicide Squad. I think we've got an untitled Sony Spider-Man project. And then we've also got a bunch of Marvel movies as well. I think we get Doctor Strange in 2016, as well as, other movies. I really probably should have pulled up the film slate here, but you get my point. We're about to be inundated. And if you didn't know that, then you clearly haven't been following the channel. You clearly haven't been online for much, but we're about to get comic booked out, and a lot of people are, so much so that a lot of people are talking about that as a possibility, that we might get tired of comic book movies. This might be a trend that will soon kind of erupt, sort of like, I think people have compared it a lot to disaster movies, how disaster movies are sort of played out now, where they were really, really, really popular back in like the excuse me, the 70s, the 80s. And sort of now they're sort of, trended out, and Westerns are another good example that people are kind of comparing them to. I personally hope it never ends, and it certainly won't be ending for about 7 years. That seems to be the length of time that people have planned out. Certainly a bright future ahead, and a bright business opportunity for all of the comic book YouTube channels out there. So please, buckle in, strap yourselves in. We're going for a ride. So now let's begin with the worsts. These people are the worst. And so yes, we're going to start with some bad stuff. The worst comic book movie actress category. Only 3 nominees here. So the worst comic book movie actresses nominees are Megan Fox for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, she plays April O'Neil, Jessica Alba in Sin City, A Dame to Kill For, and Felicity Jones in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now I will say some of these are a little dubious. Jessica Alba sort of was the odd man out in that cast, I felt. Felicity Jones maybe suffered a little bit from not having a whole lot to do and just feeling kind of out of place. Megan Fox she was Megan Fox. That tells you all you need to know. So the award for worst comic book movie actress, the dubious honor, goes to Megan Fox for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You are the worst. I mean that sincerely, but don't take it personally. The people have spoken. It wasn't all me. So Megan Fox, yes. Although, I think if you've half a mind, you probably saw that coming. So, worst comic book movie actor. And this is another interesting one, because it's, I know, somewhat a matter of opinion, but it's also kind of really, these people are the worst. Like, it's not just opinion that they were nominated. I think, we really didn't have any super terrible actors this year. We mainly just had performances that maybe by the hands of bad writing could have been a little bit better, but really just kind of left a bad taste in your mouth. Might be the best words for that. And so the nominees for worst comic book movie actor of 2014 are Jamie Foxx for The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Dane DeHaan for The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and Peter Dinklage for X-Men Days of Future Past. And if you guys are, have been following any kind of award shows, any kind of movies, any kind of critics the last couple years, some of these names will surprise you. In fact, I think all of these names could surprise a lot of people. Jamie Foxx for The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Jamie Foxx, of course, lauded for Django Unchained. Certainly a hot name in Hollywood right now, but he just wasn't great in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. The way they wrote him, I think, is really the culprit here. Dane DeHaan, another young but critically acclaimed actor playing Harry Osborn, or as I like to refer to him from that movie, Meth Head Harry. Definitely looked like that. Although it was really an interesting kind of way they kind of tried to fuse sort of the Raimi films, Green Goblin, with the comic book approach of the Green Goblin. It didn't really quite work out for me. But Peter Dinklage, of course, if you haven't been watching Game of Thrones, just turn this off right now and go watch Game of Thrones, because he is by far and away the most fantastic part of that very fantastic show. And that's why it comes as kind of a shock that he would be at the best underused in that movie, and at the worst just almost non-existent. Like, he was more... A lot of people complain about like Ronan and Malekith being underdeveloped villains. You know, some could make the argument for maybe the Mandarin, or specifically maybe Whiplash. This is the worst of them all. Like, this is, you know, he was more or less like a straw man kind of villain. He just might as well not have been there. He was a plot device, not really compelling at all. But I mean, that's kind of the point of those movies. I didn't mind Days of Future Past. I thought it was a good flick. But he was kind of billed as such. I think he was set up as the main villain, and he didn't quite get it. So the dubious honor of worst comic book movie actor of 2014 goes to Jamie Foxx, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I kind of set you up there to think it was Peter Dinklage, but it wasn't. It was Jamie Foxx. Yep, that's kind of to be expected. I think a lot of people weren't exactly pleased with his Electro, and a lot of people weren't exactly pleased with that movie in general. So now let's go to Best Comic Book Villain. And this is a really interesting category here, because we didn't really have a lot of villains that were really noteworthy this year. When two of the villains are on the worst actor list, your choices get kind of narrow. So the nominees for Best Comic Book Villain are Winter Soldier, played by Sebastian Stan in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Kind of the titler guy there. One of the two. Alexander Pierce, played by Robert Redford in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and Ava Lord, played by Ava Green in Sin City: A Dame to Kill For. All of these are great choices because they were fantastic. Ava Green stole the show in Sin City, I think, maybe even more than Mickey Rourke. Alexander Pierce was, of course, the real villain in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and he was just fantastic. I think he gave one of the best acting performances that the MCU has seen in a long time. Such a star caliber actor, like he is. He's keeping it up in his old age. But the Winter Soldier, of course, Sebastian Stan just brought that character to life. We all saw it coming. If you are familiar with the comics at all, you know that Bucky Barnes unfortunately does kind of fall to a tragic fate, becoming the Winter Soldier, although they left it on a high note, sort of a tale of redemption to be had. Eventually, he will hopefully join the light, and I expect that's probably what Captain America is going to be dealing with in future adventures. So without further ado, the award for Best Comic Book Villain goes to Winter Soldier, played by Sebastian Stan in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Not really a shock here. I think out of the choices, he was clearly the best one. I voted for him. But anyways, the people have spoken. It's not all about me anymore. So off the heels of Best Comic Book Villain, we have Best Comic Book Hero. Now this is kind of a new award, I think. I can't remember if we did it last year, honestly, excuse me. Best Comic Book Hero, but sort of how villains, that was a tough category, because the villains were sort of limited. Whenever you've got two of your comic book villains on the worst actor list, it's not going to be a bevy of choices. But Best Comic Book Hero, we had so many great heroic performances from actors this year. So the nominees are Star-Lord, played by Chris Pratt in Guardians of the Galaxy; Captain America, played by Chris Evans in Captain America: The Winter Soldier; Wolverine, played by Hugh Jackman in X-Men: Days of Future Past; and Rocket Raccoon, played by Bradley Cooper in Guardians of the Galaxy. And there are just a ton of people that are really honorable mentions here that were left off the list that you could make a case for, like Drax, played by Dave Bautista in Guardians of the Galaxy; Groot, played by Vin Diesel in Guardians of the Galaxy. It's so hard, kind of, because you can't see his face, and you can't even really hear his voice because he does a lot to it. You could arguably, make a case for James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender as Professor X and Magneto in X-Men: Days of Future Past. But this Anthony Mackie in Captain America: The Winter Soldier is probably another good nominee that could have happened. You can make an argument for him, certainly. So this is a tough one. This was a tough one to nominate. This was a tough one to vote on. Personally, I was torn, and I think you probably were torn as well if you voted, and you're probably torn now if you're looking at the list of nominees. But without any further ado, the Best Comic Book Hero of 2014 award goes to Captain America from Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Lost it for a second, got it, brought it back, and presented it to you. Of course, not a huge shock here. Captain America: The Winter Soldier, I think, one of the most critically acclaimed movies of the year. Specifically, a huge win for Marvel. Arguably their most successful sequel to date. So, yes, that's a big one there. And let's move on. Let's keep moving forward, keep rolling. Best Comic Book Movie Ensemble. And this is kind of an interesting award because so much of this is cast and how cast works. So something where a lot of your actors have been nominated for Worst Actor, not really going to fly. But Marvel seems to do an excellent job of creating these ensembles, these actors that work really, really well together. So definitely, that's why you'll see a heavy presence from them there. And so the nominees for Best Comic Book Movie Ensemble are X-Men: Days of Future Past, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, Big Hero 6, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Sin City 2: A Dame to Kill For. And as I mentioned, so many of these, Marvel movies, just because they put together such great casts. But X-Men: Days of Future Past is a really interesting one because you bring back the original cast, you get the first class cast, and really it makes it's kind of tough because there's not a lot of screen time to kind of share, but at the same time they found a really good way to balance it and juggle it. And so you just get great acting performances across the board. Captain America: The Winter Soldier, another one with a pretty big ensemble cast, but all of them great. From Chris Evans to Anthony Mackie, Sebastian Stan, Scarlett Johansson, Robert Redford, even sort of an appearance from, I think it's Toby Harris, the guy that plays Arnim Zola. Really great, kind of appearance from him. Don't quote me on his name. I know it's Toby something, but so yes, just great ensembles all around. Guardians of the Galaxy, of course, came out of nowhere, shocked everyone. Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Dave Bautista, Vin Diesel, Bradley Cooper, Lee Pace, Karen Gillan, all of these great actors and actresses across the board. Big Hero 6 also shocked a lot of people with, I think, how good it was. Personally, I went into it not expecting much, and I was blown away by that movie. And Sin City 2: A Dame to Kill For, arguably the biggest, cast of stars here with, Josh Brolin, Mickey Rourke, Ava Green, tons of folks in that cast, star-studded. All of these are star-studded movies, and that's why I made this choice so hard, I think, for everybody. But the winner of Best Comic Book Movie Ensemble is Guardians of the Galaxy. Not really shocking there. I mean, it was a tough choice, but I think Guardians of the Galaxy what really kind of made that film for a lot of people was the personal interactions between all of the characters. So congratulations to you, James Gunn, Chris Pratt, Dave Bautista, Zoe Saldana, Bradley Cooper, Vin Diesel, and everybody else who was in that movie, because you deserve that award, honestly. And I can't remember if I voted for that one or not, but personally I'm a fan of who it went to. So, Best Comic Book Movie Director. Now this is a tough award. This is a tough award because we had so many great directing performances. But without further ado, the nominees are James Gunn for Guardians of the Galaxy, Joe and Anthony Russo for Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and Bryan Singer for X-Men: Days of Future Past. Now this is really interesting because Bryan Singer, of course, has been in charge of the X-Men franchise for over a decade. Really talented director, long career, great movies from The Usual Suspects to the first and second X-Men movies. He wasn't involved in X3, although he did write it. And then he's come back for this movie and is going to be directing X-Men: Age of Apocalypse coming in the next couple of years. So tons of stuff from him, very storied career. But the other two, James Gunn and Joe and Anthony Russo, had not actually directed a movie for Marvel yet. They've both been around for a while. I think James Gunn really was well known for Super and, Dr. I'm going to skip that. That was a Joss Whedon thing. But James Gunn, very well known. Kind of a cult guy. But making his debut with Marvel here, and Joe and Anthony Russo doing much of the same. So very tough choices here, very tough choices for the voters. But that was the goal. That was, to present you with the toughest options. And the winner is Joe and Anthony Russo for Captain America: The Winter Soldier. They've done a standout job, and of course they deserve that they're apparently going to direct the Avengers Infinity War Parts 1 and Parts 2. Very well deserved from them, gentlemen. Congratulations. Of course, I guess two heads are better than one, so it's kind of, they're cheating. There are two of them. With their powers combined, they have won the Best Comic Book Movie Director Award. And now our next category, Best Comic Book Movie Actress. And this was another tight race. There were just so many great nominees, so many great performances this year. The Best Comic Book Movie Actress nominees are Eva Green for Sin City, A Dame to Kill For, Scarlett Johansson in Captain America the Winter Soldier, Karen Gillan from Guardians of the Galaxy, Emma Stone from The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and Jennifer Lawrence from X-Men Days of Future Past. All of these brilliant, brilliant, brilliant female stars. Of course, Eva Green playing Ava Lord, kind of the standout of that movie. Scarlett Johansson reprising her role as Black Widow really kind of impressed a lot of people. It was a different performance than we had really seen from her in the Avengers and Iron Man 2. Karen Gillan, Nebula from Guardians of the Galaxy, kind of stole the show. I think in every scene she was in, she just looked incredible and she acted incredibly. A great stretch from an actress. And that was another one in Guardians of the Galaxy, one of the many roles in that movie that people weren't sure how they were going to turn out. I think Chris Pratt is the big one, Dave Bautista, another big one, Bradley Cooper, maybe the biggest, how's he going to voice Rocket? But Karen Gillan, whose really only other thing was Amy Pond in Doctor Who, and Nebula is so like the polar opposite of that. Tons of people very, very skeptical, but congratulations, to her for the nomination. I think she definitely deserved it. She's been great. And the winner of the Best Comic Book Movie Actress Award goes to Scarlett Johansson for Captain America the Winter Soldier. As I kind of had said, it was a very different performance, a much more human performance from her, I think, than we had seen, and that endeared itself to a lot of people. And I really think, Scarlett Johansson has made herself one of the big stars of the Marvel Universe. I personally, and I think a lot of people feel the same way, we just can't wait to see what else she's going to do in the universe, what kind of room they're going to give her to run, and what kind of character exploration we're going to see with her, in future films. And of course, this brings us to the Best Comic Book Movie Actor category, and this is once again a very tight race. So please, please, please remember the public voted for this. It's not us. So the Best Comic Book Movie Actor nominees are Chris Evans, who played Captain America in Captain America the Winter Soldier, Chris Pratt, who played Star-Lord in Guardians of the Galaxy, Michael Fassbender, who played Magneto in X-Men Days of Future Past, Anthony Mackie, who played the Falcon in Captain America the Winter Soldier. All of these are great performances, just really, really great jobs. And so the award for Best Comic Book Movie Actor goes to Chris Evans, who played Captain America in Captain America the Winter Soldier. Not a huge shock here. Honestly, it was a very tight race. I'm not going to lie to you. Chris Pratt, very, very close in the votes. Anthony Mackie also did pretty well. Fassbender, not so much of a showing, although he really can't be overlooked. He's probably one of the best actors of our generation. But Chris Evans just kind of stole the show in Captain America, of course, seeing as he was the titular character. But he continues to impress in that role. A role that a lot of people kind of questioned him for in the beginning. I certainly didn't know how he was going to perform, but he just continues to surprise and delight, and he's certainly becoming a big star on the stage that Marvel has set. And so now, before we get into the big guns, the best movie and most anticipated movie, let's go to worst comic book movie, the last of the worst. So this is the worst, and this actually, this category was a complete surprise for me. I did not expect the way this turned out at all. So the worst comic book movie of 2014. So just, I guess tell me if you were kind of surprised by this as well. The worst comic book movie nominees are The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Transformers 4: Age of Extinction. A lot of people have been telling me for years, Michael Bay, you're the worst. And Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles certainly came out to much flop and little fanfare. And The Amazing Spider-Man 2 kind of was the same, although I think, it is the shiniest of all these turds. And you probably will find the most fans for that movie than any of the other two. The winner of the dubious honor of worst comic book movie of 2014 is Transformers 4: Age of Extinction. And this is actually the complete opposite of what I would have expected to happen. I was kind of going for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I figured that one would, take the show. Just a horrible film. But Transformers 4... I guess people think that is the least shiny of all these turds. Maybe the rustiest, I guess. Smelliest, perhaps. And so now let's take a break before we get to the big one, the best comic book movie of 2014, and go to some of the most anticipated. Now, like I had mentioned, this is going to be a big couple of years for Marvel and DC and comic books in general. So let's just jump to the most anticipated comic book television show of 2015, and there are just so many options here. The nominees are Daredevil, aka Jessica Jones, Teen Titans, Flash, Arrow, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Of course, pretty well representing both DC and Marvel here. Both of these sides well represented, and tons of great choices. Marvel, of course, rolling out their Netflix shows very shortly. DC with a bunch of projects in the works, and of course the well-known shows Flash, Arrow, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The currently existing ongoing shows that have future seasons coming up, hopefully. And so, without further ado, the winner of the most anticipated comic book television show of 2015 is Daredevil. Yes, Daredevil, the upcoming Netflix show, I think set to premiere actually in a couple of months, 3 or 4. I believe the last thing I had heard was early May. That's something that a lot of people are kind of eyeing with anticipation, with great anticipation, great expectations, you could say, because 12 years now removed from the Ben Affleck version, people are wondering, it's the perfect time, I think, because so many people have kind of finally gotten that bad taste out of their mouth. They're looking for a new version, certainly a character who's so big in the Marvel Universe. Time to bring him to screen. Of course, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe now going on, he could play a very big role in the events that are about to unfold in Captain America Civil War coming soon, and Infinity War. They could certainly use a guy who knows how to kick an ass or two in that. So now let's go to the most anticipated comic book movie of 2015, and this is more or less slim pickings. And so the nominees are Avengers Age of Ultron, Ant-Man, The Fantastic Four, and Star Wars The Force Awakens. Now, once again, like Rebels, it's kind of a stretch. There have been Star Wars comics, so we decided to include it because it had been nominated several times. But Star Wars The Force Awakens, definitely very anticipated. Avengers Age of Ultron and Ant-Man and Fantastic Four, all also anticipated. I will say Fantastic Four, probably the most controversial out of all of these, just because it seems like a radically different take than what we're used to for these characters, very different from the comics. That doesn't mean it's going to be bad, but it certainly is one of the most talked about and hyped movies coming out this year from the comic book world. So without further ado, the winner of this category, the most anticipated comic book movie of 2015, is Avengers Age of Ultron. Congratulations, Joss Whedon. You've got us very hyped to see just how dark it gets. Anytime you kind of cite Godfather 2 as one of your influences, you're going to catch my interest, especially since Avengers 1 was definitely not Godfather-esque. And now, the main event, the best comic movie of 2014. And this one was another hotly contested kind of category. Only 3 nominees, though. It was a 3-horse race all the way. Tons of votes each way. I think most of these kind of held 30%, all the way, like the votes. Not a very big margin of victory for the winner. But so the nominees are X-Men Days of Future Past, Captain America the Winter Soldier, and Guardians of the Galaxy. All of these very deserving, I think. These are the top 3 comic movies of the year. Clearly, like I said, I think in the next couple of years it's going to be much harder for us to nominate and pick just because there's going to be so many. But of course, these are the top 3 as chosen by the nominating panel and as voted on by you, the viewing public. All of these great merits. X-Men Days of Future Past, arguably the biggest undertaking of the X-Men franchise so far. Captain America the Winter Soldier, arguably the biggest Marvel movie so far, with the most impactful events to happen. It's it affects every level of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It essentially flipped the table on what currently existed by essentially removing the very fabric, S.H.I.E.L.D., what had kind of brought the cinematic universe together, what brought the heroes together. That's gone. And then, of course, Guardians of the Galaxy took the world by storm, international sensation, came out of nowhere, and it kind of just shows you that Marvel can do whatever it wants. It can do, next it'll be trotting out Hawk and Dove, Cloak and Dagger. I mean, not entirely Marvel characters, but Squirrel Girl might get a Netflix show. Who knows? But it's gonna be viewed because it's Marvel. Slap the Marvel logo on anything, and it is instantly famous, instantly recognizable, and it's guaranteed to make about $100 million at the box office opening weekend. All of these tough choices, but this is your choice. This is the biggest category. So let's go to the results. The winner of Best Comic Book Movie of 2014 is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. And this is just completing what has been a big night for Captain America. Captain America has now won the Best Comic Book Movie of 2014, the Best Comic Book Movie Actor and Actress categories. They took the Best Director, of course, lost out to the movie Ensemble, but also took home Best Hero and Best Villain. So clearly, a big night for Captain America, and I think, the fans have spoken. That is probably safe to say the biggest movie of the year and the best movie of the year. So that actually about wraps it up here from us. This has been the 2015 Comic Book Awards. I was about to say 2014, since most of the things that we've talked about are in 2014. Certainly, it's going to be a big year for us here at the Hybrid Network. Stay tuned for a hot tub update in the next couple of days as we get back to reviewing things underway. We've kind of taken a little bit of a hiatus from our normally scheduled stuff just because of the holidays. So many of us were out visiting family. We kind of took a little time off, a little R&R, but we plan on having a very big year. We're going to launch a number of very exciting and, one could argue, sort of ambitious undertakings, and we hope you follow us with that journey. We plan on rolling out all the OC that you love, with a lot of new content as well, that we hope you'll come to love just as much. So anyways, thank you for joining us here at the Comic Book Movie Awards, and tell us your thoughts in the comments below. Do you agree with these? Do you disagree? Of course, constructive criticism always helps. Thank you for joining me. I'm sorry Josh couldn't be with us here today. He's with us in spirit, and he voted as well. Helped nominate some of these categories. And I'm sure he's very proud of the work we're doing. He's also very excited for the 2015 we're going to have. So anyways, signing off, this is CJ, and I'll see you next time.
Zoom in and out on CJ's face.